that Corinth stood for and is embedded deeply into the mindset of the people that are in Corinth. And so one of the most famous things you ever hear is, and here comes Paul. It's just a great thing, and here comes Paul. But we're going to look at Corinth for just a second. Corinth had a gross, unashamed immorality, both the old city and the Roman colony. We're known far and wide for the sexual looseness. The most prominent site was the Acrocrinides. Can't pronounce that. I'm Randolph County. A sharp projection which rose to a height of 1,800 feet. On the summit of this steep mountain stood the temple of Aphrodite. These people were big in Greek mythology. What we call Greek mythology, they called reality. And they had their little sects, and they would go to, I don't know what they would call it, they would gather up, and they would go worship these false gods, which is myth to us, gods to them. So they took it very serious. And they might attend 3 or 4 different a day. It depends what issues they was going through and what God they needed to go, small g God, to go worship that day. So, let me start over here. A symbol of lust which pervaded the mind of the city. In Old Corinth, the temple maintained 1,000 prostitutes. No evidence shows the temple of the priestess were maintained in the rebuilding of Corinth. Nevertheless, the gross immorality continued as before. The attitude of the church towards immorality involved no condemnation. On the contrary, it was considered to be a normal part of life. I mean, it's just how it was in Corinth. Corinth was a big port city too, big port city. So they had ships from all around coming in, coming out. So it was a melting pot, kind of like America. Too many ideas and not enough standards. Idolatry is another feature of the city, which was closely linked to its immorality. In addition to the temple of Aphrodite, there were numerous others, and the worship of these temples were popular among the residents. It was a way of life. Excuse me. All right, number one, there were going to be temples to worship. Corinth, very large port cities. And I'm telling you what, they had hundreds of gods to go to and worship and all this. It is said that they're speaking out of ignorance, because when I look at Eric, for example, I don't see Eric. I see what we call the dirt suit. Eric to me is his actions and how he reacts, and he acts to everything. It's his heart and his mind is who he is. I just see the dirt suit. But they can't see this because they're still in the Greek attitude. Let's see, calm down. Except for some that think they walk in the flesh. Yeah, we walk in the flesh. That includes our thoughts and our emotions. The flesh we walk in is the desires we have. But here's what I like about the 2 Corinthians the most, is when Paul says in verse 4, "For our weapons are not carnal, for our warfare." Yeah, for the weapons of our warfare. And in this one, we're going to go somewhere else in a little while, and it's not going to be warfare. It's going to be more of a wrestling match, because that's the individual daily walk you have. But right now we have a warfare, and it's our warfare as Christians to tear down these strongholds of other people that don't understand the gospel. And to do that with these weapons, give me a second, I'm getting ahead of myself. So it's warfare for Christians and non-Christians, because we have to present the gospel and tear down these strongholds, and it's only possible through God. And mighty through God. That's our weapons. They are mighty through God. Without God, weapons are not mighty. Is anything achievable without God? If there is, it's not worth achieving. And in the Greek term, mighty means strong and powerful. And a stronghold, I got to get you on my mindset here. A stronghold to me is a European castle with a mountain behind it, so nothing can come in behind it and attack it. It's got this moat, and it's got a drawbridge. Y'all know the classic English stuff, right? That's a stronghold. Nothing's getting in and nothing's getting out. And even it's usually built on a long plain so you can see what's attacking. And so the strongholds of the mind are what been taught to these people in Corinth, that Aphrodite's this, and who is it? Zeus is that, and I don't know any more of those. And these are the things that they've been taught. And the stronghold is, you're trying to bring something into my reality that's not right. And that is the strongholds that Paul's talking about having to break down. And here's the hardest part about them strongholds. It's the false teachers we still run across today. Years ago, I ran across a Christian branch, and I kind of liked it and fell into it a little bit. But it was false teachers. If you took everything that they believed in, took it out the Bible, ripped all the pages out, what they thought was right, wrote down all the verses that they picked through, you'd have a pamphlet. But yet they toted this whole thing with them, but they didn't need about 17 pages out of it, and that was what they based everything on. Most of false teachers and their cultish-like ways, they like to get people because they found the secret to the Bible. There's secrets in here, and we've found them. And people stumble on it. I did. I'm one. But luckily, I had more people that was ripping down strongholds for me than they were trying to build for me. So it was, I've always been kind of circling around Christian people. But for some reason, I try to push my way around. We'll get to that in another Bible study. So that's what we're going to do for people that build strongholds, I'm sorry, y'all. And nothing's tearing them down because you're wrong, you're an idiot. It says right here, no, they're contradicting the Bible. Ran across one guy that says you had to do this, and I said, but, in the Bible you got your chapters. I said, but just right across, you're contradicting yourself. He didn't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. So I stopped arguing with other believers, and like the pastor says, we ain't got to worship with them, but we got to love them. Read 1 John, they tell you all about it. All right, so how do we tear down these strongholds? All right, the false teachers are the worst thing that can happen to anybody, especially if you're young and you've not been raised in a church and you fall across these things. It's bad. And if you ever get around somebody that like pushes you away and don't want to hear nothing you say and they want to push on you, I like referring to this, and Jesus told his disciples, knock your dust off your feet before you leave there. You don't want to take even the dust with you of these people because it might somehow crawl up and get in between your ears. And one thing I'd like to say before I move on is the people in Corinth, what they were told and seen went in their ears, and that's where their spiritual battle started, and it